What would you do if, on the night you felt completely alone, the sky above you suddenly shimmered with a soft blue light, shaping itself into the gentle outline of a woman you thought only existed in paintings? On a cold November night in the Arizona desert, Emily Parker, a woman drowning in months of depression, stepped out of her car after whispering the words, "I can't do this anymore." But just as those words left her lips, a glow rose from behind the mountains. Slow, calm, and impossibly beautiful. Emily wiped her tears, only to realize the light was forming a figure robed in blue, hands extended, face serene, the Virgin Mary in the night sky. Emily froze, breathless, trembling, as a warmth she hadn't felt in months filled her chest. Was this a hallucination, a sign, or a miracle meant for her alone? Before depression crept into her life, Emily Parker was the kind of woman people described as reliable, bright, and always prepared. At 34, she worked as a graphic designer for a small marketing agency in Flagstaff, Arizona, a job she genuinely loved. She enjoyed slow mornings with coffee, long drives through Red Rock canyons, and weekend hikes where she could watch the desert sunrise spill gold across the land. She wasn't famous, wealthy, or extraordinary. She was simply, well, balanced, content, grateful for small things. Emily grew up in a Catholic family, but like many adults, faith slowly drifted to the background of her life. She didn't reject God. She simply became too busy to think about him. Her Bible sat on a shelf collecting dust. Rosaries she once kept beside her bed were tucked in a drawer. Sunday Mass turned into Sunday errands. Even so, there was always a softness in her, a quiet kindness, a thoughtful patience, a deep desire to be good to others. But life, as it often does, shifted without warning. It started small. Nights of restless sleep, mornings where getting out of bed felt slightly heavier than usual, a few missed calls she didn't feel like returning. Then came the loss of appetite, the constant exhaustion, the silent fear in her chest that had no clear cause. Her coworkers noticed she smiled less. Her friends noticed she canceled plans more often. Her family noticed her voice had lost its usual warmth. Emily tried to ignore it. She told herself she was just tired, just stressed, just in a phase. But deep inside, something was unraveling. What Emily didn't know, what she couldn't have imagined, was that the darkest part of her journey was leading her to a moment that would change her life forever. A moment written in the night sky. The change didn't come with a dramatic breakdown, a tragic loss, or a sudden event. It came quietly, like a slow-moving fog that rolled into Emily's life so gradually that she barely noticed it until it had already settled deep within her. By early spring, her exhaustion had grown heavier, almost sticky. She would wake up after a full night's sleep, feeling as if she had run a marathon in her dreams. Simple tasks, replying to an email, choosing what to wear, cooking herself dinner, began to feel strangely overwhelming, as if each action required a level of strength she no longer had. She hid it well at first. During meetings, she forced smiles. During family calls, she lied, "I'm fine, just busy." During dinners with friends, she laughed at the right moments and nodded when expected. But inside, something was shifting. She found herself staring out windows longer than she meant to, forgetting what she had been doing, losing her train of thought halfway through sentences. Her mind, once sharp and creative, felt foggy, slow, like thick smoke filling a room. The worst part wasn't the sadness. It was the numbness. She stopped enjoying things she once loved. The desert sunrise, the warmth of coffee, the songs she used to hum while driving. And then came the anxiety, unexpected, intrusive, and relentless. Her heart would race at random moments. Her hands would shake without warning. Her throat would tighten as if she couldn't breathe. She tried therapy. She tried changing her diet. She tried journaling, meditation, herbal teas. Nothing worked. Her mother gently asked if she wanted prayer. Her sister offered to stay with her for a week. Her best friend suggested she take time off, but Emily brushed it all away. "I just need rest," she kept saying. Yet every night, the silence in her apartment grew louder. Every morning, the world looked dimmer. Every week, her spirit grew weaker. And with each passing day, she felt herself slipping into a version of life where everything was muted, emotionless, gray. She had no idea that the deepest part of this descent was setting the stage for a miracle she never asked for, but desperately needed. By late summer, Emily's world had shrunk into a narrow corridor of fear, numbness, and exhaustion. The woman who once hiked miles through Arizona's glowing canyons now struggled to walk from her bed to the kitchen. Food tasted like nothing. Music felt irritating. Conversations drained her. And mornings. Mornings were the worst. She would open her eyes and, for a brief second, forget the heaviness she lived with. But then it hit, like a dark wave crashing over her chest. A wordless dread that made her curl into herself, unable to breathe. Some days she didn't shower. Some days she didn't speak at all. Some days she simply sat on the floor, back against her bed, staring into nothing as hours slipped by silently. Her friends stopped inviting her out. Her co-workers stopped expecting her to contribute much. Her family grew worried, but she kept insisting she was fine. But she wasn't. She was falling, and she knew it. The panic attacks began in September. Sudden, violent, unpredictable. She would be washing dishes when her vision blurred, or sitting at her desk when her heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst. Her hands shook. Her breath stuttered. Her skin tingled. Each attack left her trembling for hours. She feared them, but worse, she feared telling anyone about them. One evening after a full-blown panic attack, Emily drove out into the desert just to escape the walls of her apartment. The emptiness of the landscape felt comforting, like a place where she didn't have to pretend, where no one expected her to be okay. She returned there again and again, always at night, always alone. Sitting in her car under the dark sky, she felt something she never thought she would, a quiet wish to disappear, not to die, but to stop existing for a while, to stop feeling everything and nothing at the same time. The breaking point came after a disastrous day at work in early November. She made mistakes, missed deadlines, and forgot basic tasks. Her manager's concern only made her feel worse. That night, Emily didn't just drive into the desert to find silence. She drove there because she couldn't bear her own thoughts anymore. She didn't know it yet, but that night, that lowest, most fragile night, was the one heaven chose to break through. The night of November 14th began like so many others, heavy, silent, and suffocating. But for Emily, something about this night felt different, as if the air itself carried a strange tension and she couldn't explain. Work had been unbearable. Her hands shook during a meeting. She forgot a client presentation entirely. She overheard co-workers whispering about her behavior. Her manager pulled her aside, gently asking if she needed time off. Instead of responding, Emily simply nodded, grabbed her bag, and walked straight out of the office. She didn't even remember driving home. Her mind felt like a tornado, swirling thoughts, fractured emotions, and a storm of shame she couldn't contain. By twilight, she was pacing her apartment, her breathing rapid and shallow. Every corner felt too small. Every noise felt too loud. Her own heartbeat felt unbearable. She needed space. She needed air. She needed somewhere she could break down without anyone hearing. So she grabbed her keys and walked out. The sun had barely disappeared when she left the city limits, steering her car toward the vast openness of the Arizona desert, her silent refuge. The sky deepened from orange to indigo, then indigo to near black, dotted with cold stars. Wind brushed lightly across the sand, carrying the smell of dry earth. By the time she reached her usual pull-off point, a small dirt clearing overlooking distant mountains, night had swallowed the land entirely. Emily turned off the engine. Silence collapsed around her. She sat still for nearly 10 minutes, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe normally. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. Her throat felt tight, as if words were trapped inside her chest with no way out. Finally, she whispered, barely audible, "I can't do this anymore." With that, the dam broke. Tears streamed down her face. Her sobs echoed inside the empty car. The kind of grief that comes from months of quiet suffering poured out of her all at once. And then, just as she buried her face in her hands, A soft light flickered through the windshield. At first it was faint, so faint she thought it might be a passing plane or a reflection from her dashboard. But the light grew, brightened, shifted, and began to rise above the distant mountain ridge. Slow, steady, and impossibly graceful. Emily wiped her eyes. The light did not disappear. In fact, it was coming closer. Emily blinked, confused. The desert was normally pitch black at this hour. No street lamps, no car headlights, no nearby houses. But now a pale blue-white glow hovered just above the silhouette of the mountains. She leaned forward, squinting through the windshield. Her first thought was logical. A helicopter, a distant car, a ranger's spotlight. Anything would have made more sense than what she was seeing. Yet the light didn't move like any machine she knew. It wasn't sudden or sharp. It didn't flicker like a headlight. It rose gently, almost tenderly, like the slow unfurling of dawn long before sunrise. Emily stepped out of the car, her boots crunching softly on the gravel. Cold desert air wrapped around her, but the glow before her carried a warmth that felt strangely soothing. Her tears stopped midstream, not out of calmness, but out of shock. The light grew brighter, expanding outward in a soft oval shape. Its edges shimmered faintly, like ripples on a lake touched by moonlight. And beneath it, beneath this mysterious radiance, Emily felt something she hadn't felt in months, a calming pulse, a sensation that moved not across her skin, but through it, as though the air itself was breathing with her. She wrapped her arms around herself, unsure whether to be afraid. Then the light shifted. It elongated, slowly, gracefully, its lower half stretching downward, its upper half rising with impossible fluidity. The shape was deliberate, intentional, not random. Emily's heart pounded. Her breath caught. No longer an oval, not a beam, not a spotlight, but something forming. It was as though invisible hands were gathering the light itself and shaping it, pulling the glow inward, refining it, crafting its edges with gentle precision. A strange thought flickered through Emily's mind. It looks like a person. Her rational mind rejected it instantly. She was exhausted, emotional, overwhelmed. Maybe her eyes were playing tricks on her. Maybe the tears had distorted her vision. But the longer she stared, the less doubt she had. The light was no longer just a light. Its center darkened slightly, defining what looked unmistakably like folds. As if fabric, soft, flowing fabric, were being formed out of pure radiance. Emily pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. No, no, this can't be. Yet she couldn't look away. The shape was becoming clearer, gentler, more human. And as the desert stayed silent, as the stars above held their breath, the light continued to gather, continued to rise, continued to take form, as if preparing to reveal something she was never meant to forget. The light continued to condense, gathering into itself like a slow, graceful breath. And then, almost imperceptibly at first, it began forming the outline of a figure, not sharp, not sudden, but gentle, like watercolor blooming across a canvas. Emily stood frozen, her hands trembling at her sides. The shape lengthened, becoming unmistakably human. A soft arc appeared where a head would be. The glow beneath it curved outward like flowing robes stirred by a silent wind. She could see delicate folds, illuminated but impossibly detailed, moving as if alive. Her breath hitched. This wasn't a trick of the eye. This wasn't exhaustion. This wasn't imagination. The figure lifted slightly higher above the mountains, rising just enough that the stars behind it shimmered through the halo of light. The glow concentrated around the head, forming what looked like a soft crown. No jewels, no sharp lines, just a radiant circle of pure calm. Then the hands appeared, graceful, open, extended outward, palms slightly tilted, as if offering comfort rather than demanding attention. Emily's knees weakened. She had seen this posture before, in old paintings and church statues from her childhood, in the prayer cards her grandmother used to keep tucked in her Bible. But this wasn't a picture. This wasn't stone or paint or imagination. This was living light, And then, finally, the face emerged. Not in full detail, but enough for Emily to feel it rather than simply see it. A serene expression, gentle features, eyes lowered slightly as if in compassion, not judgment. A face that radiated a love she had forgotten even existed. Emily let out a small broken sound, half gasp, half sob. Mary! The name slipped out of her before she even realized she'd spoken. Her voice echoed softly across the silent desert. At that moment, the air around her warmed. Not hot, but comforting, like stepping into sunlight after months of cold. The warmth didn't touch her skin first. It touched her chest, her heart, her very spirit. It was as if something holy had reached into her brokenness and whispered without words, I am here. Emily's tears returned. But for the first time in months, they didn't feel like pain. They felt like release. For several long seconds, Emily could do nothing but stare, breathless, trembling, overwhelmed by the impossible reality before her. The figure in the sky, gentle, radiant, unmistakably holy, hovered with a stillness that felt both powerful and tender. Then it happened. Not a voice, not a sound carried by the wind, not anything her ears could hear, but something moved, deep in her chest, somewhere beneath the fear, beneath the numbness, beneath all the layers of pain she had tried so hard to hide. A feeling, a message, clearer than words could ever be. You are loved. The phrase didn't echo in her mind. It blossomed in her heart, warm, soft, undeniable. It washed over her like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Emily let out a single shaky breath. Then came another wave, gentle like a hand resting on her shoulder. You are not alone. Her knees nearly buckled. She clutched her arms around herself, as if holding her own body together. The message continued, wordless yet powerful, a quiet reassurance that cut through months of despair. I see you. I know your pain. I have always been with you. Emily's tears fell freely now, but they weren't tears of fear or grief. They were tears of recognition, as if something deep within her had been waiting for this moment, waiting to feel seen, waiting to feel held. The glow around the figure seemed to pulse softly, in rhythm with Emily's breathing. The robes shimmered with a pale blue light that looked impossibly soft, almost like running water. The hands remained extended, not commanding, not judging, but offering, simply offering comfort. Emily whispered into the cold air, Why? Why me? There was no reply, but the warmth in her chest deepened, spreading through her ribs, her arms, her legs, a steady, soothing presence that felt like being embraced from the inside out. For the first time in nearly a year, the tension in her chest loosened. The knot in her throat dissolved. The heaviness that had clung to her body for months lifted. Not entirely, but enough for her to feel herself again. Enough for hope to flicker, and in that fragile flicker, she understood something profound. This moment was not an accident. This light was not random. This presence was not imagined. It was meant for her. Emily didn't try to stop the tears anymore. They came in trembling waves, raw, shaking, uncontrollable. Her legs weakened beneath her, beneath the weight of everything she had carried for so long. She sank to her knees on the cold desert ground, the gravel pressing into her jeans, her hands bracing herself as if the earth itself were holding her up. Above her, the glowing figure remained still, not distant, not unreachable, but near enough that Emily felt her presence like a warm tide rushing over her. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed, but not the silent, suffocating sobs she'd known for months. This was different. This was release, a breaking open. A pouring out of everything she had buried inside her heart. Every sleepless night, every morning she was afraid to face, every panic attack that made her feel trapped inside her own body. Every moment she thought she was losing herself. All the hidden pain she'd never been able to speak aloud. It all came spilling out of her in desperate, shaking breaths. And with each breath, something remarkable happened. The warmth from the figure above seemed to move with her sobs, like a steady rhythm, a heartbeat that wasn't her own, matching her trembling exhale with gentle waves of comfort. Emily felt it on her shoulders first, a weight lifting, then across her chest, the tightness loosening, and then deeper, in the quiet, wounded place inside her that she had never dared to touch. She didn't understand how she knew it, but she felt something, someone, touch her, not physically, not in a way she could point to, but in a way that reached further than any human hand ever could. A presence, warm, loving, holding her together even as she fell apart. Her sobs softened, her breathing steadied, her hands slowly lowered from her face, and for the first time in nearly a year, she didn't feel hollow. She didn't feel numb. She didn't feel like she was fighting for her life with every breath. She felt light, held, whole. As she lifted her tear-soaked face toward the radiant figure, Emily sensed something she had thought she would never feel again: hope. For a long, suspended moment, Emily remained kneeling on the desert floor, her cheeks wet, her chest warm, her breath slow and steady. The radiant figure above her didn't move, yet Emily felt as if the entire world were gently holding its breath with her. Then slowly, almost like a sigh, the light began to shift. The edges of the glowing robes softened first, blurring into the dark sky. The soft blue radiance surrounding the figure grew thinner, more translucent. It wasn't abrupt or frightening. It was tender, like a candle slowly dimming rather than being blown out. Emily watched with wide, tear-filled eyes. She didn't want it to end. A moment earlier, she would have begged the world for anything to silence her pain. Now she found herself silently pleading for the light to stay. But miracles do not exist to be controlled. They exist to be received. The figure didn't disappear all at once. It faded in layers, each one revealing more of the starlit sky behind it. The serene face softened into a gentle glow. The open hands melted back into the shimmering air. The halo dissolved into the darkness like falling dust made of stars. Yet even as the form faded, the warmth remained. A deep, settling peace sat in Emily's chest, not sitting lightly on the surface, but anchored, rooted, alive. She placed a hand over her heart. It no longer raced. Her breathing was calm. Her thoughts were still. The crushing weight she had lived under for nearly a year was gone, not eased, not reduced. Gone. She didn't know how she knew this, but she knew. When the last trace of the light dissolved into the night sky, the desert fell silent again. Cold wind brushed across the sand. Stars blinked overhead as if nothing unusual had happened. But everything had changed. Emily slowly stood, her legs shaky but her spirit steady. She wiped her face with the back of her sleeve, blinking up at the empty sky. "I know what I saw," she whispered. Her voice didn't shake. It didn't falter. It carried certainty. A quiet, powerful certainty she had not felt in months. The sky was dark again, but she was no longer afraid of the dark. Emily barely remembered the drive home, not because she was overwhelmed, but because everything inside her felt unnervingly calm, as if the storm that had raged for months had suddenly gone silent. When she reached her apartment, she didn't collapse into bed like she usually did. Instead, she stood by her window for several minutes, gazing at the night sky, waiting to see if the light would return. It didn't, but the peace remained. For the first time in months, Emily fell asleep with ease. No racing thoughts. No anxiety twisting in her stomach. No dread pressing down on her chest. Just quiet, warmth, rest. When morning arrived, it wasn't the usual weight that woke her, but sunlight. Soft, golden Arizona sunlight filtered through her curtains, and the moment she opened her eyes, she knew something was different. Her mind felt clear, her breathing steady, her body light, as if someone had lifted a burden she didn't realize she had been carrying. She sat up slowly, half expecting the panic to return. It didn't. Instead, there was a gentle fullness in her chest, a steady, warm presence she recognized from the desert, a lingering echo of the love she had felt the night before. Emily touched her hand to her heart. "Thank you," she whispered into the quiet room. Her breakfast tasted like food again. Her shower felt refreshing rather than exhausting. She opened her windows, letting fresh air sweep through the apartment, something she hadn't done in months. Then, almost without thinking, she picked up her phone and called her mother. Her mom answered immediately, worry in her voice. But Emily's tone was calm, bright, almost like her old self. They talked for nearly an hour. For the first time in a long while, Emily didn't pretend she was okay. She didn't lie, and she didn't hide. She told her mother she was feeling better, truly better. And though she didn't mention the apparition, her mom noted something different in her voice. You sound peaceful. And she was. It wasn't just that her depression had lifted. It was that she felt guided, held, renewed. A seed of hope had been planted in her heart, and she could feel it growing. For the next several days, Emily carried the memory of the apparition like a quiet flame inside her, steadily burning, gently warming, never dimming. She didn't know if she should tell anyone. The experience felt intimate, sacred, almost too fragile to expose to judgment or disbelief. But the peace within her grew stronger, not weaker. And by the end of the week, she felt a sudden urge to share it. Not for validation, but because the experience itself seemed to be asking to be spoken aloud. The first person she told was her best friend Rachel. They met at a small cafe downtown, a place they used to visit regularly before Emily withdrew into her depression. Emily arrived early, sitting by the window with both hands wrapped around a warm mug. Her heart pounded, not from anxiety, but from the weight of the story she was about to tell. When Rachel walked in, her eyes widened. You look different, she said, sitting down cautiously. Better. Lighter. What happened? Emily hesitated. The words felt delicate, fragile, holy. There's something I need to tell you, she finally said. She expected skepticism, confusion, maybe even concern for her mental state. But as she recounted the night in the desert, the light, the figure, the message without words, her sobbing collapse, the warmth, the peace. Rachel didn't interrupt. She didn't pull back. She didn't give the tight-lipped smile people give when they think you've lost your mind. Instead, tears gathered in her eyes. Emily, she whispered, I believe you. Those 3 words sank deep into Emily's chest, easing a fear she hadn't recognized until that moment. Rachel reached across the table and took her hand. Maybe it's time, she said softly. Maybe you should go back. Back where? To church. The suggestion struck Emily harder than she expected. She hadn't been to Mass in nearly 10 years. Faith had become something distant, something she planned to revisit one day, but never did. Yet now the idea didn't feel like an obligation. It felt like a calling. The following Sunday, she stood outside a small parish on the outskirts of town, St. Anne's, hands trembling slightly, heart pounding with a strange mix of fear and longing. As she stepped inside, the familiar scent of candles, wood, and incense washed over her. And for the first time in a decade, Emily felt like she had come home. Stepping into St. Ascurmani's that Sunday marked the beginning of a quiet transformation. Not dramatic, not rushed, but deep and steady, like a seed finally receiving water after a long drought. Emily didn't try to become a new person overnight. She didn't force herself into routines or make impossible promises. Instead, she followed the gentle pull she felt inside, the same calm warmth she had experienced beneath the desert sky. She began attending Mass each week, sitting quietly in the back pew, letting the hymns and prayers wash over her like soft rain. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she simply breathed. Sometimes she closed her eyes and pictured the soft blue glow she had seen in the sky. Every time she left the church, she felt a little stronger. She started journaling again, writing honestly about her fears, her hopes, and the miracle that had changed everything. She wrote about the heaviness that had once consumed her and the peace that had taken its place. She wrote about gratitude, rediscovery, and the slow rebuilding of a life she thought she had lost. Her appetite returned. Her sleep stabilized. Her panic attacks vanished. She reconnected with friends she had pushed away. She apologized to her family for her distance, and they embraced her, relieved and joyful to see the woman they loved returning to herself. Even her co-workers noticed the change. Instead of numbness, she carried quiet clarity. Instead of fear, she carried purpose. Instead of hiding, she carried light. But Emily knew it wasn't just recovery. It was renewal, a renewal that came from a presence that met her in the darkest, loneliest corner of the desert, a presence that had known her pain and loved her through it. She didn't tell many people about the apparition, only a few who she trusted deeply. It wasn't something she needed to prove. It was something she lived, and every night before she went to sleep, she whispered a simple prayer. Thank you for finding me, because she understood now that even when she had given up on herself, heaven had not given up on her. Her life wasn't perfect, but it was full again, full of hope, full of purpose, full of grace. If you're listening to this and carrying your own heaviness, please remember this. Darkness never has the final word. Just like Emily, you may feel invisible, forgotten, or exhausted beyond what you can explain. But grace finds us, often in the quiet moments, often when we no longer have the strength to search for it ourselves. The Virgin Mary comes to us in ways we don't always expect, through a light, a person, a whisper of peace, or simply the strength to face another day. If this story touched your heart, please share it in the comments below. Someone reading your words might find hope through you. And if you'd like more true stories of faith, healing, and modern miracles, don't forget to subscribe to Ave Miracles. Your presence here means more than you know. May peace find you tonight, and may Our Lady watch over you always.